morning, everybody, and welcome to Coffee and Football, presented by John Donovan and Longhorn Wealth Management Group. I'm your host, Blake Monroe, where I'm joined daily by Bobby Burton. And today we got Jeff Howe filling in for Jerry Hamilton, who's just feeling a little under the weather, but doing a lot better. But we're 68 days away from kickoff. Be sure to tell us who your favorite number 68 is. We'll get to that here in a little bit. Also, be sure to tell us where you're checking in from, what you're drinking, get your questions in as well. And guys, today is kind of a special day because 3 years ago today, Arch Manning committed to the University of Texas.
Jeff, I'd love to get your view on this. But, 3 years ago, Arch Manning commits to the University of Texas. At the time, it wasn't a shock because we'd been reporting that Texas was deeply involved here. But it was almost too good to be true. You got to remember, Texas was coming off a 5-7 season when Arch Manning committed to the University of Texas. That's where things were at that time. Obviously, since they turned the program around, but he bought into it, Jeff, at a time when Texas wasn't, smelling like roses exactly. Steve Sarkisian got a buy-in from the nation's number one player, the guy that's, the offspring of the first family of football. And I think that ever since that time, and I'm not saying he's the purpose of it, but he's certainly been emblematic of it. Texas football has taken a turn for the better in the last 3 years.
It's done everything that you hoped it would do. It kick-started the Steve Sarkisian era and has taken Texas to heights, Bobby, that probably, unless you were alive and experienced the run in the 60s under Coach Royal, or that run from, let's say, 2004 to 09 under Mac. That's what it looks like Texas is getting ready to go on. And you can point to Arch's commitment as, you signed basically that's the offseason, Bobby, that started turning the program around. It started with signing that offensive line class with Kelvin Banks, Cam Williams, and DJ Campbell. And, bringing in Gary Patterson as a special assistant to get the defense fixed. And then you get a commitment from Arch. Everything turned around at that point. So, it's been everything that we thought it would be and then some. And here we are 3 years later, and now we're looking at Arch. The timeline's played out. A lot of people, Bobby, the talking heads and the people that didn't know any better said, well, he's probably going to transfer, and how are he and Quinn going to coexist? And I think everybody that knows what's going on said, just wait, just be patient. It'll play out. And here we are 3 years later, Texas coming off of back-to-back CFP semifinal appearances, getting ready for year one of Arch as the starter. I'm excited. It's hard for me, Bobby, to hide my excitement, and I don't publicly get excited about a lot of stuff, but I'm downright giddy about where Texas football is right now.
I'll just say this. The thing about so Quinn Ewers, obviously, and people are saying, "Oh, Quinn Ewers started he did in some ways. So did that offensive line class that Jeff is talking about, where they kind of came back from the middle of nowhere and allowed that to happen or made that happen. I get that, but there was something about Arch Manning and the blind faith that he showed. I think that is the true differentiator, I guess. Quinn Ewers was bouncing back. He was originally a Texas guy and grew up loving Texas, etc. They got the big lineman, and then I think it's the blind faith of Arch Manning that he showed in Texas that has paved the way for not necessarily the on-field performance of the Longhorns. By the way, I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the ascension of Texas as a program, nationally ranked and nationally considered. So 3 years ago today, Arch Manning became a Longhorn. I do want to say before I move forward, I have to say happy birthday to my own father today as well. He is a young 83 years old. Age is just a number, as I told my dad this morning. Age is just a number.
Bobby, I've been fortunate to sit with your dad at a few Texas football games, so he's good company in the stands.
Well, we got a lot to talk about today, fellas. It was a huge weekend, obviously, for the Longhorns. But first, Bobby, I'm going to let you tell everyone about John Donovan and Longhorn Wealth Management Group.
Yeah, absolutely. John is a big recruiting fan. For those unaware, he's also president of Longhorn Wealth Management Group. John's a proud Texas Ex's Life member whose wife and 6 siblings are also UT grads. The family passion for UT is what led John to create his firm, Longhorn Wealth Management, and dedicate it to providing investment, retirement, insurance, and estate planning services and solutions to Longhorn families and friends across the nation for more than 30 years. The booms were big this weekend, John says, with UT landing both Vodney Cleveland and Richard Wesley. He is waiting now on what Jerry's highs will bring. The Longhorn momentum train in recruiting is definitely picking up speed. So to add to this positive momentum, Longhorn Wealth wants to offer all OTF fans the opportunity to take advantage of a free 90-minute private consultation to learn how working with a certified financial planner can help you maximize your wealth, minimize your taxes, and ensure your legacy. Call John and the Longhorn Wealth team, 972-707-4900, or go online, longhornwealth.net. Schedule your free 90-minute private consultation with John to build, manage, and secure your own financial future. Hook 'em from John and the Longhorn Wealth Management Group. We appreciate your sponsorship, John.
All right, guys. Well, as I said, a big weekend on the 40, of course, especially for the defensive line. And we're going to go down through a couple of these position groups and talk about them. So, Bobby, let's start with the defensive line.
Yeah, absolutely. I think this is one of those positions that got a big shot in the arm this weekend. Frankly, first on Saturday, Vodney Cleveland commits to the University of Texas. That's the big defensive tackle you'll see here as we talk about him out of Birmingham, Alabama. He commits on Saturday. He visited last weekend, set his commitment date immediately after visiting, and then committed to Texas. We knew this was coming. We understood this was coming. It was not a surprise to us, frankly. Now, strange things can happen on the way to the dance, but essentially we knew this was happening because he had told some folks privately that it was going to happen, and so we were prepared for it. The one that we weren't prepared for was what happened yesterday afternoon. 5-star Richard Wesley out of Los Angeles, California, committed to the Longhorns. He's more of a defensive end type, 6'5", 255 pounds, very much in the Landon Jackson mold. Here he is. I mean, just a big old guy. He is actually a year younger than his classmates now. He reclassified. He's only supposed to be a junior in high school, but he is a guy that came in to Texas and wanted to move up a year early. Texas said absolutely, as did every other school. Oregon, he was once committed to as well. But 6'5", 245, 250. The other thing I would say about this, he participates in the 100 meter in track. So I'm not saying he's running 10.6, but he did run 11.2 in the 100 meter as a guy that big. That's pretty strong, big time player for the Longhorns. And so when we talk about defensive line, Jeff and Blake, I think big shot in the arm this weekend for Texas. Texas now has 3 defensive tackles committed, 1 defensive end. I think they're going to be still going out for a few more. Kendall Gerville was one of the guys that visited this weekend. He, during his official visit, announced that he's going to announce his decision on July 2nd. I think that portends well for Texas. He told C.J. Vogel yesterday at the airport that Texas is his leader. He's a big defensive lineman out of Fort Myers, Florida. Then you had James Johnson also in this weekend out of Miami Northwestern. He is one of the nation's better defensive tackles as well. He called Texas DL, defensive lineman U. And I was a little taken aback by that comment, Jeff. I'm sure you were as well. But if you look at the NFL draft, Texas has had 7 defensive linemen drafted in the last 3 years. So maybe it'd be fun if there's some truth to that. I'll put it that way, if at all possible. The other thing I would say to you guys is this. The Longhorns right now waiting on Damari Simeon as well. He's expected to announce, I believe, on the 26th of June. Simeon visited Texas last week, defensive tackle out of New Jersey. Long story short, there are guys at edge, Jamarian Carlton, Bryce Perry-Wright, Lamar Brown. Defensive line recruiting, people wondered what Kenny Baker and Alan Clark would do as newcomers to this staff. I think the answer is pretty clear. The Longhorns have a duo right now at defensive line recruiting in Kenny Baker and Alan Clark that can get the job done. That's what it feels like to me.
There's two things here I think worth discussing, Bobby, when you look at, if we combine, like you said, we combine edge and interior and we just look at all just D-line as one group for a minute. With Lealon Clark, it says a lot about the confidence that Sark has in him as an assistant coach to hire him, knowing whoever the edge coach hire was going to be, if they were going to hire one, it was going to let PK take a step back from being a position coach and to be kind of the overview defensive coordinator.
Yep.
That is huge because PK, if you go out to a Texas practice, PK is not standing over on the sideline sipping coffee, watch the defense do pursuit drill. Like he's in it. So I think for him to be willing to give some of that up to let Lealon Clark come in and coach the edge group, I think that says exactly how this Texas staff views him as a coach. So we talk about him as a recruiter, as a guy with player development. I think that had the potential to be a home run hire, and it's looking like it's trending that way. I think the other thing too, Bobby, and we'll get an O-line recruiting here in a minute, as these recruitments have broken down and, Texas might, whether it's NIL or whatever, they might miss out on a tight end or a running back at the last minute. But there are three positions where they've made it very clear they're not going to cut corners.
Yep. Offensive
line, interior D-line, pass rusher, and quarterback. And on the anniversary of Arch's commitment, I think that's apropos, especially with Dia Bell coming off of a win in the Elite 11 finals. I think those are the three positions where Steve Sarkisian and the messages from the top down is like, we are not going to cut corners. We're not going to just get the next guy. We want to get our top targets come hell or high water, whatever it takes, at quarterback and the people that protect the quarterback and the people that get after the quarterback.
I think that's really well said, Jeff. Really well said. Because, look, you it's one thing to go after a Tyler Atkinson or a Xavier Griffin, right? Xavier Griffin, more of that edge guy. But I think that when you look at building a team, you want to build it with quarterback, D-line, O-line, okay? And then everything else can kind of revolve around it. I mean, I think back right now, frankly, to Georgia last year. Georgia made it to the college football semifinals without a true number one receiver. I mean, right? I mean, they and a backup quarterback. Because why? They were so strong on the lines of scrimmage. And they had playmakers at edge, disruptors, high-level disruptors. And so you start talking about the defensive line, the offensive line that Texas is trying to piece together. I mean, this has a chance to be the best defensive line class Texas has ever signed, by the way. I just want to put that out there. I mean, last year's was pretty darn good, but and when I say ever, I want to be clear. I'm talking about the last 25 years or so.
Yeah.
The reality of it is, if you build from those angles, you're going to have a football team that then maybe you can layer on. If you don't find the right guys, you can layer on in the portal. Texas has found a receiver in all 3 years of the portal, whether it's Emmett Mosley this year, Isaiah Bond, Matthew Golden last year, Adonai Mitchell the year before that. They found guys like that. And so I look, I'm a big believer in what Sark is doing, but the Wesley commitment took me by surprise. We knew Vodney Cleveland was coming. As big as it was, we didn't know Richard Wesley was going to switch his commitment. And that was a big, big pickup for Brandon Harris, the GM at Texas, the whole group, Lealon Clark, everybody involved in it as well. So just a big, big day for the Longhorns yesterday. And I think they're going to reap more rewards in this recruiting class from this weekend as well. We need to talk about offensive line recruiting next, too, because we just went over that. Jeff, John Turntime was in, young man out of North Crowley. He was in. Longhorns have some offensive line recruiting yet to go, at least.
Yeah. On John Turntime, kind of one opinion from me and then one little nugget. The nugget is from Jerry, who was gathering intel yesterday while sick. So props to Jerry for powering through it. Jerry thinks this could very easily be a Texas-Michigan battle. It's looking like Michigan may be emerging as the primary competition for John Turntime. And that makes sense, Bobby, because every big time offensive line recruit Texas has been on in this cycle, Michigan's been on them as well. And they'd like to not leave this cycle empty handed with big time offensive, high school offensive line recruits. So keep an eye on Michigan in the John Turntine battle. I think it was the opinion for me. I think it was big for him to get on campus on a weekend when Diabell was on campus, and on a weekend when Nicholas Robertson and Max Wright, your two offensive line commits in the boat, when they were there. So I think all of that positive stuff with Texas taking the last swing at John Turntine, we'll see how that plays out. But I like the way that the visit structure was with two of his potential future teammates on campus, Diabell coming off and winning the Elite 11 finals there, and really of the Felix Ojo, Malachi Lee, the big time offensive line prospects that Texas is recruiting. This was John Turntine's weekend. So I love the fact that it all, the shape of it, Bobby, really, I think boded well for Texas this weekend.
Yeah, Jeff, I agree with you. Turntine was the lone offensive lineman that was uncommitted that was in. Nick Robertson, as well as Max Wright, were also there. Young men out of Klein and Melissa High School. Here you see Turntine. Jeff, a lot of people have said, oh, well, he's not big enough, all this other stuff. Just telling you, when he may only be 6'3.5", 6'4", but he's got that long arm length, dude, and he is a complete finisher on the offensive line. He is a tackle. Michigan, Stanford trying to give it a go. A lot of people had said that A&M had made a run, and I think that they have. Don't dismiss the Aggies in this recruitment. But to your point, Jerry is hearing it's more Texas, Michigan. Turntine wants to become a doctor. I think that could have some role eventually in what he wants to do. He was up for being one of the top 10 academic guys in his entire class. The other one that we're watching, or the other two that we're watching closely, you mentioned Malachi Lee, big offensive lineman out of Kamehameha High School out in Hawaii. He visited Michigan over the weekend, Jeff and Blake. He is coming down to a decision that we expect this week as well. Mm-hmm. So one of the things that I think is interesting going on right now in recruiting, and I put an article up on Texas Football if you want to see all the guys Texas still recruiting that are available right now and not committed. Not that they're not still recruiting some guys that are committed, but there's going to be about 15 commitments of guys that Texas is looking at hard right now from in the next 7 to 14 days. Mm-hmm. I mean, there are going to be guys that go off the board quickly, okay, in this scenario. And I think that's one of the things we need to talk about. Felix Ojo, by the way, was up at Utah as well. He's the big offensive lineman out of the Mansfield that Texas has been in on as well. And then Zayden Crimpin was at Michigan as well with Malachi Lee. Of course, he is out of Prosper in the Metroplex there in Dallas. So you really have 4 guys left. You have 3 commitments at this time on the offensive line. They're going to go to 5 or 6. So they're really, I think, waiting on tackles. You mentioned Turntine, Lee. I think Crimpin could play. He's a guy that can play across the line. And then Ojo's a tackle as well. So it'll be interesting to see how the offensive line group plays out over the next, week to 14 days, because some of these guys are going to be making decisions, and we'll have to see which way it goes.
Yeah. I'm not saying Zayden Crimpin is like the highest rated of these guys or has the best NFL future or anything like that. But what you just said, Bobby, exactly what I was thinking with him. I love the position flex of a guy that he play tackle, he could play guard, you could kick him inside, train him to play center. I like taking one guy in every O-line class that has the potential to slide anywhere on the line. And Zayden Crimpin looks like he's that guy in this class. Like Nicholas Robertson, he's a true interior guy. Max Wright is a tackle. We know they're after these big-time tackles, but I like Zayden Crimpin, just the versatility that he's got down the road to, like you said, play pretty much anywhere. And, that center position, center's one of those spots, Bobby, can be out of sight, out of mind, and it's been like that for Texas the last few years because Jake Majors, I got a lot of respect for Jake Majors, starting more games than anybody in the history of this program. Say what you want about Jake Majors as a player, you didn't worry about center. Like you knew you were at least going to be able to hold serve there. That's one of those positions that doesn't become a problem until it suddenly is a problem. So I just like to see Kyle Flood continue to make steps and to do things so that it's not a problem. And I think Zayden Crimpin could potentially factor into that.
All right, guys, well, we've looked at D-line, we've looked at O-line. Let's talk a little wide receiver recruiting. Let's start there.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's start with I want to start with Chris Stewart because I think that he was one of the very first commitments of this Texas Longhorn class, young man out of Shadow Creek. He's visited Tennessee, SMU, some others have given him some TLC, so to speak. But the important thing about Chris Stewart is he's been committed the longest, I think, of this class, along with Dia Bell. And he came home from his official visit to Texas this past weekend and said, hey, I'm shutting it down. I'm not visiting anywhere else. I'm 100% committed to Texas. That's what his dad had said on this channel, actually on One Coffee and Football to let people know. But you never know because recruiting is recruiting and things can and do change almost immediately. But Chris Stewart committed to the Longhorns, not taking any other visits. The other official visitor that was in over the weekend that visited Texas that, we really were checking on, I guess is the best way to say, for this weekend was Caden Finley. Now, he is Jermichael Finley's son. He's well documented. He's out of Aledo High School up in Aledo, Texas. He is a strong, powerful receiver, great hands, great moxie, is not going to test out of this world, but is going to be one of the better receivers in the country. He has got a decision to make here right now. Is it going to be Texas or is it going to be Notre Dame? We don't know the answer quite yet. Some people are saying, oh, he's leaning to Notre Dame. Some people said, oh, he's leaning to Texas. My best estimate on this is wait to see what happens here. There was a time when I thought Notre Dame was the favorite. There's been a time when I thought Texas is the favorite. So I'd say let this play out. I would add one more news and note on wide receiver recruiting at this point. Jalen Lott, a young man whose dad, James, played at Texas, has visited Texas, USC, and he visited Oregon this weekend. I think USC going into the Oregon visit was the leader. So keep that in mind as well. But Longhorns trying to sign 3 to 4 high school receivers this year. I think Jermaine Bishop, the more and more we hear about him, the more and more likely he's going to get his start at wide receiver, perhaps, depending maybe on what Jalen Lott does. So because there are some similarities there between the two players. So that's something to watch. Jeff?
Yeah. It did kind of, as somebody who loves the electricity that Jermaine Bishop brings to the field, it did kind of just break my heart just a tad, just a little bit, to see him posing in his pictures on his OV weekend with the Thorpe Award. But that's okay. That's okay. That'll get sorted out. I just want him, whether it's returns or whatever, I want him to have the opportunity to touch the ball. You said it, Bobby, with Caden Finley. Like, Notre Dame has put up one heck of a fight for Caden Finley. And, it's interesting that Notre Dame is the competition for Texas here, because when I look at Caden Finley, I see a little bit of Jaden Greathouse in his game.
And I thought too. That's exactly who I thought.
Yeah, just not a guy that's going to wow. Like, you probably look at his testing numbers, nothing's going to blow you away, but just a big, strong, physical guy, faster, long speed, better long speed than you probably think, but a guy that's not afraid to put his body on the line over the middle and make tough catches and be a guy that can really be a really good, reliable target for a quarterback. So I like, will it end up being Texas or Notre Dame? I don't know. I tend to think, Bobby, Texas will get that across the finish line at the end of the day. But Chris Stewart, there seems to be one guy in every class, and I'm talking like it's like a rock band where you get your stereotypical guy in every role. But like, there's one guy in every recruiting class who commits early, and you wonder, okay, is that guy really going to be a part of the class? And they get to the end, and you're like, you know what? That actually was a pretty good take by the staff. Chris Stewart's trending to be that guy in this class, Bobby. I mean, he committed really, really early, so he's almost been out of sight, out of mind. But you get to it now, it seems like, okay, yeah, Texas has stayed on him. He stayed on Texas. it looks like he's going to end up signing with Texas, and we'll see what he does. I'm looking forward to seeing what he does as a senior, and we'll see what that looks like. But that could end up being a really good take, somebody they just hang on to throughout the cycle, and you could look up at the end of the day and be like, yeah, you got one of the top, 25-ish receivers in the country with Chris Stewart.
Okay, we had a comment here, Bobby. I wanted to use this to segue into the next one from AJJ. He said, I love the notes on Tyler Atkinson and Hookham. So let's talk linebacker.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, we've got a bunch of news and notes over on Texas Football. Tyler Atkinson texted Jerry yesterday. And when we say Jerry is sick, Jerry was not moving from his hotel room this weekend, guys. After getting sick on Saturday afternoon, he literally said he didn't leave the hotel room the whole day. So long story short, Jerry did do some communication via text with players. One of those was Tyler Atkinson, a surprise visitor of sorts for the University of Texas at linebacker. He announced his visit midweek of this week. He has spent some time in Austin. Wow. They're wearing a helmet flying. He spent some time this summer in Austin working with Derek Johnson. His agent is David Mulugeta, who is a Longhorn graduate, but doesn't play favorites with the Longhorns per se. He's one of the high-profile agents in the game right now. But long story short, Atkinson is looking like more and more like it's Texas and Georgia for him. So we'll see what happens here. But really, I think that's a question mark with Tyler Atkinson. He's one of those out-of-state guys you just don't know where it's going. I think that there were some underrated recruits that were also on campus. Cozy Okpala out of Mady Creek and Calvin Thomas out of the Cypress ISD, both on campus, both Houston area prospects. Cozy Okpala and Thomas, in my opinion, both leaning heavily to Texas right now. Now, Okpala has that really, really good size, 6'2", 230-ish. Okay, he plays like he's 6 foot 205, and I'm telling you, you'll watch his film as we watch Tyler Atkinson here. Atkinson's one of those disruptors we talked about. I like Okpala and Calvin Thomas as well. We'll see what happens with Tyler Atkinson over time. I think that recruitment's going to go on for quite a bit.
It's interesting, Bobby, that Calvin Thomas and Cozy Okpala are both on the board in a year where Texas moved Trey Moore from defensive end to off-ball linebacker and brought Brad Spence in out of the portal. So if Texas ends up with one or both of Okpala and Thomas, I would really watch to see what the staff does with Trey Moore this fall and how they use Brad Spence, because that could be the future for both those guys. It seems like they're both in the mold of guys where you could see – and this is going to sound like a bad word, but it's for lack of a better one this morning, maybe some redundancy between the buck end and kind of the Sam linebacker, where they're kind of the same body type. You can use them interchangeably. And I think what the staff is trying to do, they're trying to manufacture pressure on the quarterback from multiple spots within the defensive front. You want to get it from your two edge guys. You look at the disruptors that they're recruiting on the interior defensive line now. And, Tyler Atkinson would be the guy that's kind of the linchpin in the middle of your defense, that stalwart, rock solid piece to hold everything together in the middle. And then your two outside backers are guys that they can be second level players, but on a given down, kind of like Georgia did with Jalen Walker. You can play him, and Texas does it with Anthony Hill too. You can play him at linebacker depth, but have him rush the quarterback from there and use him, get him going on some different angles, to some different passes to the quarterback, play some games, just send him screaming off the edge. So I just like the fact that with Okpala and Thomas, and to a lesser, Xavier Griffin fits this mold as well, you're getting guys at the linebacker position that have the dual ability to be able to rush the quarterback on a given down. They're
just recruiting at an elite level.
Right? Yeah.
I mean, that you see all these players. I'm just telling you now. So Matt Brown had his pick of players in Texas in the 2000s. He really did. I mean, he was selecting more than he was recruiting at times. I'm not saying that Texas is not doing that right now. They are recruiting, but they are recruiting national players and then selectively inside the state of Texas. And I've been down this road and watched other teams do it. I've never seen Texas do it in my lifetime.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what's happening right now. So I mean, as a guy that followed national recruiting professionally for the first 20 years, 15 years of my career in this industry, I saw Florida State do it. I saw Miami do it. I saw USC do it. Texas right now, Georgia, Ohio State. Those are the three that are doing it as well, if not better, than anybody in the country.
All right, guys. Well, we are going to get to some questions here momentarily. But first, this morning, I need to tell everyone about one of our sponsors today, and that's Huel. If you're constantly on the move, or maybe you're just tired of skipping meals, then Huel has you covered. Their Black Edition Ready to Drink is a total game changer. It's a complete meal in one bottle with 35 grams of protein, 27 vitamins and minerals. It's high fiber, low sugar. You're going to feel full, focused, and ready for your day no matter what pops up. There's no prep, no cleanup. Just grab it and go. Now, Huel's already sold over 500 million meals around the world, and now it's your turn to try it. New customers get 15% off plus a free gift at Huel.com when you use promo code ONTexas. And it's summertime, and my days are still crazy, even with the kids being out of school. I don't always have time to grab a good meal. So I rely on Huel to come in clutch. They save me time. They save me money. I just grab it out of the fridge, give it a shake, and I'm ready to rock and roll. So start saving time and money without compromising your nutrition today with this exclusive offer for new customers of 15% off plus a free gift, and it really is a nice gift, when you use promo code ONTexas at Huel.com. Again, 15% off and a free gift when you use promo code ONTexas at Huel.com. That's Huel.com. Please see the description for the terms and conditions. Skip the stress, not the nutrition. Try Huel today for complete nutrition bottled. Well, we have some super chats, gentlemen, that we need to jump into. And the first one here from Spank B. Thank you for the super chat. It says, good morning, OTF. The way that the Longhorns are recruiting in the front seven, I'm not too concerned with losing a running back here and there.
I agree, but Jeff,
when you build your program along the lines of scrimmage, I think you're building something that's built to last. It's got some staying power. It's not just going to be a flash in the pan. And I think this is a credit to, you said it earlier, Bobby, and I think that's the other key thing with this people need to take away. I think this is the Texas staff looking at, hey, if worse comes to worse, what can we go get out of the portal that we can't get from the high school ranks? It's really hard in the portal to find edge rushers, offensive line, specifically tackles and interior defensive linemen. You can find them, but you're going to have to pony up a lot of money to get those guys in the portal. And I think this is the staff saying running back, wide receiver, corner, safety. You can find those guys in the portal. There are more of them available, more playmakers available at those positions than there are at quarterback, offensive line, and defensive line. That's how you build something that's built to last. And I think that's attributed to Sark, Brandon Harris, J.M. Jones, the whole crew over there. Their approach to roster building in college football in the year 2025, I believe it's the kind of approach that can win you a national championship based on where your areas of focus are in high school and then in the portal.
Yeah, I will say this. You need a running back or two, okay, to be a great football team these days, because the undervalued part of that with Sark is not just as a runner, but as a pass receiver. I mean, look, there are a lot of good running backs out there that could pass the muster just running the football, okay? There are a ton out there. There aren't as many that can be as good and as lethal in the receiving game. Okay. And that's where I do think I don't want to. So while I agree with the offensive and defensive lines of scrimmage and all that discussion, I really do. I think the underestimated value is in the passing game. You can't, Texas, Jaden Blue scored touchdowns in big games last year in the passing. Okay. That is a key for Steve Sarkisian. Okay. So while I hear you on the running portion of it, the receiving portion for me is very important. It it doesn't get as much attention as it deserves, I guess is the best way I would say. So while I agree with you overall, I think there's some nuances to that answer.
Yeah, and let's not make any bones about it either, Bobby. Losing KJ Edwards hurt because I just have a lot of respect for Scott Surratt, not just because he's won a bunch of state championships, but the kind of kids that come out of his program and how prepared, going back to Keontae Ingram when he got to Texas, physically he might not have been ready to go right out of the gate, but in terms of just football IQ, his understanding of offensive football, of the passing game, pass protection, mentally he was as ready to go as any running back recruit I've seen Texas get in the last, 10, 15 years, whatever you want to look at it. And I think KJ Edwards is on the same path because of what Scott Surratt puts on his running backs to understand about the route tree and protections and operating within a pro style offense. So KJ Edwards losing him hurt, but I've seen Texas, Bobby, come through with, Deontay Foreman and Jonathan Brooks and guys that were not very highly recruited high school guys or highly thought of high school guys that ended up being NFL caliber backs by the time they left Texas. So you can find them, but when you get one that you think is kind of the complete package that can really be everything you want in a running back and you lose that battle, and ain't no mistake about it, it hurts.
And fellas, our next super chat this morning from Mike Gothnell. Thank you, Mike. He says, good morning, gentlemen. 2 questions for y'all today. Do we have any news or a feel from the Turn Time official visit? And does a Wesley commitment have a better chance of sticking than his Oregon one did?
Well, the answer to the Wesley question is yes, because the Oregon one didn't stick at all. so yes, it has a better chance. I also think there's some family ties to Texas there. So I think there's some other aspects going on. As far as turn time is concerned, and Jeff mentioned this, we got some news from Jerry yesterday. As I mentioned, he's out sick again this morning. Best of luck to you, buddy, if you're listening in, getting better. Hopefully you're back tonight for talking ball. But my thought process on this, and from what he said, he thinks it's Texas, Michigan, and Texas A&M for turn time at this point. Those are the top 3, maybe in that order. He doesn't want to, jinx it or whatever, but he feels like Texas had a great visit weekend, had been doing well with him, has prioritized him from the very get-go. Kyle Flood has been on John Turntine for 2+ years now. And so I think some of that consistency is showing value at this point in time for the Longhorns. We'll see if that's enough to get them over the top. We do not have a commitment time frame yet for John Turntine. So we'll see what that looks like. The one offensive tackle that we do have a timeline for right now is Malachi Lee. I think it's going to be later this week for the Hawaiian offensive tackle. So he might be the first one off the board, and that would leave Turntine and Ojo at tackle, as well as Zayden Krempin left.
Our next super chat from Bevo Mac X or Mac 10. Is it safe to say the departure of Tashard Choice is really hurting the running back room recruiting?
It didn't hurt. It didn't help.
Yeah.
I mean, no offense to Chad Scott, the new running back, but Tashard Choice had previous relationships with several of those running backs Texas was working. Chad Scott did not necessarily have those pre-existing relationships. So Xavier Crowell and Tashard Choice had been great, had a great rapport. KJ Edwards, great rapport. Amari Latimer, great rapport. So my point being is that it certainly didn't help, because you're then starting over, just like we told you a minute ago, that Kyle Flood's relationship with John Turntine is one of the strengths that they're calling on. That's because he's been here for 5+ years with Steve Sarkisian. Chad Scott's new to the scene, even though he's a good running backs coach and has some proof in the pudding there. Mm-hmm. It doesn't mean otherwise. Oh, by the way, Chris Bacon from Naples, Italy. I think he's checking in from a train. He told me he posted a tweet yesterday saying hook him from St. Mark's Square near the Vatican. He posted it on Twitter. So good luck. Be safe. Long story short, on running backs and Chad Scott as a recruiter, this time last year, everybody was worried about Kenny Baker. Were they not? Josiah Sharma had went to Oregon. Myron Charles had went to Florida State. What's going on with Texas recruiting at D-line? A year later, what do you think of Kenny Baker? So I think that sometimes it just takes a little bit, and that is part of the negative when you have new coaches come in. There's a value to having PK be here, the same offensive and defensive coordinator since they got to Texas. There's value in that, and some of it translates in recruiting.
Yeah, I got nothing to add to that, Bobby, other than like to your point about relationships. You brought up PK. The first thing I thought of was it really helped Lance Jackson's recruitment that PK had recruited his brother when he was at Washington. Now you're able to establish you got that relationship with the family. So we talk about NIL and everything else, and it's valid, but recruiting is still about relationships. And I think it would be incredibly short-sighted to look at Chad Scott and place his worth as a recruiter and a position coach on the first 5 months he's on the job. Let him get this cycle. If we're sitting here a year from now and still talking about the same issues at running back recruiting, all right, we'll probably revisit the conversation at that point. But I wouldn't just write him off or make a wholesale implication just based on these 5 months.
I need to correct myself. Somebody in the chat mentioned this, and I had neglected this. June 27th for Malachi Lee, July 4th for John Turntine. Turntine does have a date. I don't know why that slipped my mind, but July 4th for John Turntine. That means a week, or this coming one for Malachi Lee is this coming Friday. John Turntine, I think, is the Friday after that, July 4th. Is July 4th on a Friday this year, guys, or is it?
You are correct, Bobby.
Okay.
Yep.
All right, fellas, one other super chat from Rich Money Cash One. Thank you. And he says, what happened with Braden Rouse and then Melvin Paris Jr.?
Paris Jr. did not make an official visit to Texas this weekend. He was expected to, but Texas canceled the official visit prior to getting on campus. As far as Braden Rouse, he visited Tennessee over the weekend. He has not announced that he has not announced a decision. Texas continues to recruit him. We did not mention him because he didn't come in this weekend. It was last weekend. But Texas continues to recruit him. Xavier Griffin is one that the Longhorns have long wanted, a young man out of Georgia. He is an edge / outside linebacker. Those guys are all top-tier targets for the Longhorns.
And Michael Schuler with Super Chat says, if or when we land Ojo and Turntine, what would the plan be? Both are elite left tackle prospects, and I struggle to see either bumping to the right side or inside.
Oh, I think that Michael, I don't necessarily agree with that. I'll say this. I mean, I don't know that, like, Turntine, I think, is a left tackle. His arm length and athleticism. Ojo could be a guy that could play all over the line to me. Doesn't mean he won't get his first shot at left tackle or right tackle, by the way, which I think it would be stupid not to give him a try there. But I think he's got a body type that can play anywhere on the line. That's the difference between those two.
Yeah, that's the kind of stuff, you're talking about two pretty high-level prospects. I wouldn't get caught up in left tackle, right tackle. Just get him on campus, get him in the fold, and, sort it out later. I mean, Texas had plenty of guys that have made it to the NFL playing right tackle. You've seen plenty of guys that play right tackle in college. There's a few of them I can think of that flip over and end up playing left tackle in the NFL. So I wouldn't get too caught up on left or right. These are two high-level guys that you get them and then you figure out the rest later.
All right, Bobby, if you would be so kind as to tell everyone about Omaha Steaks this morning.
Yeah, dude, I've been killing Omaha Steaks lately. I had it again this weekend. Look, it's about to be 4th of July. We just talked about that. Maybe we could have Omaha Steaks for John Turntine's official commitment. From handcrafted steaks to family grilling favorites, Omaha Steaks delivers the world's best steak experience for all of your 4th of July grilling options. Enjoy USDA certified tender steaks, juicy burgers, and so much more. Now, during their 4th of July sale, you can get 50% off site-wide at omahasteaks.com. Plus, our listeners here at OTF get an extra $45 off with promo code ONTexas at checkout. You have to see site for details because there are some specifics for that. But again, 50% off site-wide at omahasteaks.com, plus an extra $45 off with promo code ONTexas. There's nothing quite like the all-American feeling of a 4th of July cookout. It's the perfect time for you to stock up and celebrate with the exceptional handcrafted flavor and convenience of Omaha Steaks. They've been America's original butcher since 1917, family-owned with more than 100 years of experience in the meat industry. Burgers, chicken, pork, seafood, as well as fine classic steaks of all types and delectable desserts. Get fired up for the 4th with Omaha Steaks. Visit omahasteaks.com for 50% off site-wide during their 4th of July sale. And for an extra $45 off, use promo code ONTexas at checkout. That's 50% off at omahasteaks.com and an extra $45 off with promo code ONTexas at checkout. See site for details.
Thank you, Bobby. And let's jump right back into some more questions, fellas. We do have a lot of them. And let's take some team questions. We got a lot of people asking about CJ Baxter this morning, like Hook 'em from Arkansas podcast says, will Baxter be ready to go by week 3? Todd Lacey, how's Baxter looking along with Christian Clark?
I think Christian Clark is much further along than Cedric Baxter. And I say much. You know, somebody asked me the other day to put a number on where Cedric Baxter is right now in his rehab. And I think it's 70 to 75%. Christian Clark's at 95 to 100 at this point, guys. So will he be ready by game 3? I think that's the game plan, actually, is game 2 and on. I don't expect him to go at Ohio State, not as of right now. And nor do I think he needs to. Like, I think you try to get through that game without Baxter unless he's really, truly ready to go. There's been some encouraging signs from him, but I don't know that he's ready to go. Christian Clark will be ready to go as long as there's no further injuries between now and football season. I mean, obviously, Longhorns lost 2 guys in the preseason last year. I hope they don't do that this year, because if they did, running back could be shorthanded again in 2025.
Yeah, there with Baxter, my kind of timeline for him, use those 3 non-conference games you've got after the Ohio State game to get him ready. Then you've got a bye week, and then you've got the SEC opener at Florida. Hopefully he's ready to give you something substantial by the time you get to Gainesville. But my thing, Bobby, I look at him later in the season as, you know, use him as you can, as he is, but don't rush him back, because I want him healthy, ready to go. Basically, you can almost use him like you'd use a long reliever out of the bullpen, bringing in a fresh arm for a game. If you can get him kickstarted right around the time of that Arkansas game and then Arkansas A&M and SEC championship game and then a CFP run, you could have a fresh CJ Baxter for the last, 5-6 games of your season to take you into winning a national championship. I know that's big picture thinking, and Sark can't afford to think that way, but that's how I'm looking at CJ Baxter. I want him 100, as close to 100% as he could possibly be before you really turn him loose again.
Let me ask you this question, because Jeff, I haven't gotten your thoughts on this because you didn't join us until January. Did you think that Trey Wisner, and I thought he had a tremendous season, but do you think he ran out a little bit of steam late, like a little bit of juice? Was it starting to wear? Was he starting to show some wear and tear late? Because he had become that A&M game. He was such a stud. Yeah. I mean, just what a baller. But it felt like once he got into the playoffs, like Jaden Blue had the big play against Clemson, right? Jaden Blue had the big plays against Ohio. what are your thoughts on that? Arizona State kind of corralled him,
Yeah. I'm not saying I'm right or wrong. Just my opinion is I think Trey's the kind of running back that needs to get into a groove for him to be most effective. He needs to get some carries, get a rhythm. Jaden Blue's not really a guy that needs to get into a rhythm. I mean, because of how good he is as a pass receiver, you can kind of just put him in and go. I think it was really hard, Bobby, if you look after the A&M game, there was no rhythm to be had against Georgia in the SEC championship game. And then I thought Arizona State schemed that game as well as they possibly could have. And I think it goes back to it's a combination of I think Weiser needed to get into a rhythm. I think the A&M game did maybe kind of slow him down a little bit because of how he was needed to be used in that game. And I think it boiled down to the Texas run game just being too wide zone dependent. They were easy to scheme against towards the end of the year and really didn't have a counterpunch. So when you've got a running game that's easy to scheme against and you don't really have that counterpunch to go to, I think that's one of the reasons why the run game stagnated. That's why with an overhaul of the offensive line and moving some pieces around with 4 guys off to the NFL now, I think Texas has a chance to let the identity of the run game in 2025 develop organically. Like, you can think, yeah, we want to be a wide zone team or we want inside zone to be our staple or whatever. Now you can just let it happen and figure out, all right, this group, especially with Cole Hudson and Neto and DJ Campbell on the interior, okay, what does this group do well? Because it might not be wide zone. It might be something different. So I know I'm getting a little too far to 2025, Bobby, but I think having a more diverse run game can help a guy like Trey Wisner get into a rhythm where it's going to make it harder for teams to scheme against what you do because you will have those counter punches in your run game where you really didn't have them last year.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I just look at it after that A&M game, he did have 100+ yards against Clemson, but I felt he lost a little juice. Just tread on the tires, you know. And hopefully this offseason, that's one of the things Texas talked about working with him on is strengthening him up. Rod calls it adding armor. I think that's going to be particularly important. I think he'll be fresh going into the year, but adding a Cedric Baxter later in the year, to your point, Jeff, could be extremely valuable to Texas overall, if that's the game plan.
We're going to talk more running backs, fellas. Dave Ashley here wanting to talk James Simon. He says, Bobby, why does everyone forget that Simon is working every day to push to the front of the line at running back? And then Just a Dude also says, what's the hype around James Simon?
So there's 2 pieces here for me, and let y'all think about this. One is we don't forget about James Simon working every day to get to the front of the line. But tell me a player on the Texas roster that isn't. So, you think that, I don't know, Jarrett Gibson isn't working to get to the front line, or Christian Clark or whoever, or Cedric Baxter to overtake. So I think that we don't forget about him. It's just, that's a natural thing, I think, across the board, that those guys are pushing. I do think that James Simon, the word from camp has been that he is a little bit more ready than maybe even they thought he could be. I think that the one player that he has a reasonable proximity to or type is Christian Clark. And so I think he and Christian Clark have to figure out, maybe they're the backups and Jarrett Gibson moves down. I don't know. We need to see this and what happens in fall camp, because I do think that Trey Wisner is the leader. I think Cedric Baxter is proven, but still injured to a degree. I think Clark, Gibson, and Simon are going to kind of fight it out a little bit.
Yeah.
And hopefully more than one of them is ready to go. Not just one.
Yeah. That's the thing, Bobby. If we learned anything from last year, it's that you can't have too many capable running backs ready to go. One thing is, some people have been pointed out in the chat, and I agree with it. I think it's worth repeating. You look at the degree of CJ Baxter's knee injury. He had 3 ligaments, the LCL, the PCL, and the ACL. All 3 sustained some level of damage in that knee injury he had last year. So it's tough enough to come back if you just tear or need surgically repaired one of those. But when you suffer damage to multiple ligaments, that's something you've got to be really careful with. So I'm not going to poo-poo the summer reports of how he's doing, but this is one where I think the staff knows, and I think the staff's going to take this approach. They'll follow the medical team's lead. They're going to be very, very careful with him, because not just for your national championships pursuits, but for his football future, a setback for him could be really devastating, considering the degree of a knee injury we're talking about. With James Simon, I know we talked about this in the past, Bobby. Typically if you're going to see a freshman come in and contribute and give you something early, it's going to be a running back. And typically, why I'm excited about James Simon is the stuff we were hearing from spring practice. It kind of reminds me of other Texas freshman running backs I've heard of in the past that generate buzz early. Typically those guys play like one of the best ones that I can remember was, I remember Charlie Strong's first year running into Casey Studdard, and Casey asked me, "Hey, who's number 33 at running back, the freshman?" I was like, "Oh, that's Deontay Foreman." Like, remember Deontay was a late enrollee. He had some academic stuff and got there late. He's like, "Yeah, he's the best running back on the roster." I said, "He's been there like 2 days. How can you tell?" He's like, "Trust me, he's the best running back on the roster." And lo and behold, Casey Studdard was right. So but you hear that a lot with freshman running backs, Bobby. That position, if there's a quote unquote easy one or easier one where guys can acclimate quickly, it's going to be running back. So I'm excited about James Simon in 2020. And one guy we haven't talked about, Bobby, the chat's brought him up a little bit too. It's a big year for Jarrett Gibson. And I think there was something to be said for a guy that didn't get a lot of carries at IMG. I know you think, okay, maybe that's a good thing that he doesn't have tread on the tires. I think maybe he needed last year to really just adjust to the speed of the game because of the lack of reps in high school. He wasn't a high volume carry guy because he didn't need to be at IMG. So I think he learned a lot last year. And it's going to be a really big camp for Jarrett Gibson too.
I would need to see Jarrett Gibson do something this year. I've said that. I mean, I thought he was okay last year. Obviously, the fumbleitis hurt him quite a bit and his opportunities. But I don't know. He didn't strike me as a game changer at running back even when he had his opportunities last year. Perhaps that changes when he gets more carries. Because to your point, when you're talking about Trey Wisner, sometimes it takes a little while for their engines to rev up, takes a few carries. Maybe that's Jarrett Gibson as well.
Here's an interesting question. If I can find it. Yeah, Just the Dude says, who are we expecting to be the gadget guy this year? Like Keelan Robinson, Silas Bolden, etc.
I'll let you take this, Bobby, because we talked about this last night on the live stream, and I'll let you take this first.
So people are wanting it to be Ryan Niblett, and I don't know that that's the answer. I don't know that he has one this year, guys, unless I'm just missing it. Maybe DeAndre Moore, but it doesn't feel that way. DeAndre doesn't have – usually the guy that is his gadget guy has that 0 to 60, and it's actually the 0 to 10 that starts fast, right? So that's the Keelan Robinson that was really quick, or the Jaden Blue, or he used Xavier Worthy in that role. I don't know if there's that guy on this roster, because I don't think Ryan Niblett is it. Unless, Jeff, you have somebody. What did y'all come up with last night?
I lean to where you do. I don't think there is one, and I don't think he needs one, because I think we're looking at it wrong if we're looking at gadget guys. I think when you look at what Sark does on offense, I think he looks for a unique skill set to develop and maximize and get the most out of. He did it with Bijan. He did it with Keelan Robinson. Last year, I think it's an insult to call him a gadget guy. Jaden Blue was that guy last year because of how dynamic Jaden Blue was as a receiver. So I don't think Sark is the kind of coach that's going to say, all right, I need the electric slot receiver. Who am I going to plug into that role? No, I think he's going to look for guys that, look at what he did with Jordan Whittington. Like, you just got to have a guy that's just got a unique skill set that, like, all right, what can I do with this guy? I don't think it's necessarily going to be a wide receiver. I think, Bobby, it's more than likely to be a Michael Terry or a Nick Townsend, somebody like that can play multiple positions, line up in multiple spots, do different things, be used in different ways. So I don't think there necessarily has to be one this year, because I don't necessarily think Sark has that Keelan Robinson. It may have been Silas Bolden last year, but it got to the point where, especially once Isaiah Bond got hurt, they needed Silas Bolden to actually play like legit wide receiver snaps. So anything outside of that, it wasn't really going to happen. So I just, again, at the risk of repeating myself, I don't think you need to force a square peg in a round hole.
I like the idea of Nick Townsend and Michael Terry as gadget guys. It's a different type of gadget guy.
Yep. But
I like the idea because they have plus speed for their positions. Especially if Michael Terry plays more of an H-back type eventually or something.
And we've seen the unconventional gadget guy at Texas before, like Lil Jordan Humphrey. You could call him a gadget guy.
Yeah.
A guy that can line up wide. He can line up in the slot. He can line up in running back. He can be a wildcat quarterback on the goal line. It doesn't have to. Your gadget guy doesn't have to fit in a certain box.
Yep.
It's just a unique kind of unicorn-like skill set.
I would never call Little Jordan Humphrey a gadget guy. I'm being honest. I wouldn't, because he was he's a good wide receiver, but effectively they used him that way.
Yeah.
I wouldn't call it like Jaden Blue. I would call a gadget guy, even though he was a running back. Does that make sense? Same with Keelan Robinson.
100%, Bobby. I would think more of them as specialty players.
Yeah.
Guys that you can expand the skill set, that have unique, diverse skill sets, and how can you get the most out of that? Yeah, I'm with Brandon here. Like Michael Terry, I know he's at wide receiver right now, but he could be a guy that is just an offensive, just a positionless weapon at the end of the day.
Well, we have more.
I know that Dalen McCutcheon has the outright speed to Dave Ashley's. I hear you, but he doesn't have those 0 to 10 yard jets.
Now Jermaine Bishop, Bobby,
he's
got it.
Yeah, Jalen Lott has. Those are the ones that's the kind of thing we're talking about, guys. It's that 10-yard split for their position that allows them to just. I mean, Jaden Blue would catch the ball and accelerate, and just linebackers had very little chance.
Well, before we get to our last questions of the day, Bobby, I'm going to let you tell everyone about Longhorn Wealth Management Group one last time.
Yeah, absolutely. As a proud UT alum, John Donovan, president of Longhorn Wealth Management, served 15 years as a Dallas, Texas Exes board member, and he's now helping lead the build out of the Collin County, Texas Exes. If you live in Collin County and want to get involved, just shoot John an email, and he will get you added to the chapter email list for all upcoming Exes events. With this past weekend completing the third and final of the Longhorns official visit weekends for the month of June, the new commitments received from Vodney Cleveland and Richard Wesley have now moved Texas up into the top 10 in recruiting team rankings. We've got a lot of stuff still to go with recruiting. John's going to be there with you guys to watch it all through. John wants to make his own commitment to help all OTF fans by offering you a free 90-minute private consultation to learn how working with a certified financial planner can help you build and manage your own financial future and discover how you can truly maximize your wealth, minimize your taxes, and ensure your legacy. Take advantage of this free 90-minute consultation. Call John and the Longhorn Wealth team, 972-707-4900, or go online, www.longhornwealth.net. Schedule your meeting today. Book them from John Donovan and the Longhorn Wealth Management team.
Thank you, Bobby. More super chats this morning to get to. First one from Antonio Harris, talking a little baseball. Thank you, Antonio. He says, Blake, Will Gasparino to the portal? Bad day. Yes, he is going to the portal, something that Jeff and I have been kind of keeping an eye out for a while now. We'll call it a mutual parting of ways, Jeff. I think will be the best response.
Hey, how are they doing? I was going to ask you, how are they doing overall in the portal, the baseball team right now?
Really?
Somebody that, like me, I don't keep up heavy with baseball. How are they doing overall?
Yeah, so they've added a couple of arms, including Friday. Got a guy out of Western Kentucky that they are just absolutely in love with. But overall, really well. Added a lot of bats, a couple of pitchers, a pair of pitchers, I guess I should say. Jeff, CJ, and I broke it down on Friday a little more in depth for those wanting to watch that. That's what we covered on Bases Loaded, and didn't host anybody this weekend, but I think there will be more good news on the way, Bobby, is how we'll put it. Muted, Jeff.
It wasn't Blake. It was me this morning. Dang it. I think the veteran bats they added with Livingston, Freeman, Maroknik, and Robbins, guys that have done it at the Division I level for multiple years. I think that's as big as anything. You've got bats that have proven it over a large body of work that they can hit. The Gasparino thing is I don't call it a bad day. I just call it an unfortunate day because Will is really talented. Could have gone pro out of high school, but he and his family really valued the experience of playing college baseball, wanted to play at Texas. I just think it's going to be one of those deals where I think both parties are going to be better off in 2026 apart from each other. My thing with Will is, and Blake, it's one of those deals. It's a moot point to ask Schloss or Tula or anybody about it now because Will's not going to be back. But, Will reminds me of guys I've seen in the minors. When you get to a certain point, you're legit 6'5", 6'6", and hell, Will barefoot is over 6'6". He's probably close to 6'7", legitimately in cleats. I just think there's only so much physically that you can do to cut a swing down. So it's just physics works against you. Unless you're Aaron Judge, physics is going to work against you at some point trying to cut a swing down. So hopefully he can get it turned around because, like I said, he's really, really talented. It sounds like UCLA probably going to be his next stop. So best of luck to him. But I don't worry about Texas putting together a really good outfield. And let's not forget, man, Tommy Farmer's gone. Max Blue's going to be a multimillionaire when the draft comes up. Mm-hmm. Will's gone. But, hey, with Maroknik and Freeman could play some outfield. Robbins is an outfielder. Yep. And you're gonna get Jonah Williams back next year too. So I'm not worried about the Texas outfield.
No, they're sitting pretty in the outfield. And then one other one real quick, John 007. While the turnover, we had a really good season last year. I've said a couple of times, actually, Texas is looking to upgrade across the board. It doesn't matter what the last name on the jersey is. Well, even though Texas doesn't have last names on the jersey, but you get my point. I mean, they want to upgrade and, pretty much the same thing that Sark does in football. Use the portal to find those missing pieces and plug them in. So look at it that way.
Got to remember that Schloss did not get to do much in the portal last year.
Yeah.
So this may be the turnover year for him. Get more of his guys into the program.
And the portal runs through July 2nd. So a couple weeks left. The Loin Girder, thank you for your super chat, says Texas defense is on fire with recruiting. Why does it feel like the offense is behind them right now, especially in the skill positions outside of quarterback? Also, tell Jerry hangovers aren't an illness.
Jerry was not hungover. I can tell you that much because he started feeling it while he was driving. Defense is on fire, first of all. So agree with you wholeheartedly. The offense, the running back situation makes it a little bit more evident. But I would say wide receiver is not bare by any stretch. They like Chris Stewart. They like Jermaine Bishop. They like Cohen Brown. They like Caden Finley. Now, are any of those guys ranked in the top 2 or 3 in the country at receiver? No. And that's fair. I mean, Tristan Keys, Aaron Gregory, what's the guy? Jabari Mack. All those guys committed elsewhere. We'll see what happens if Texas keeps its hook in the water, so to speak, long term on any of those guys. But Texas likes what they have at receiver right now. Chris Jackson's not complaining. I think that running back is the question mark.
Yeah, I think on receiver too, Bobby. I think when you look at the depth chart right now, just the makeup of that room, you got one guy on the roster right now who's draft eligible after this season. That's DeAndre Moore. So if he decides to come back, I mean, this is a year where maybe you can get away with taking 2 or 3 in the high school ranks because you could have a really, really deep room. Now, some guys might transfer out or whatever, but you're going to have a really deep room. And plus, I'll borrow a line from our guy, Rod Babers, wide receiver. Rod said it for years. It's the deepest position in football. And if push comes to shove, that may be the position above all else where you can find really high quality players in the portal if you need to go get one.
And Texas has.
Yep.
I mean, Emmett Mosley, we've yet to see him play as a Longhorn, but Isaiah Bond, Matthew Golden, first-round pick, Adonai Mitchell, second-round pick. Sark's been able to do that in the portal. So to that point, I am a little, I think the hole to Loingirder's part, not so worried about receiver. The hole at running back is concerning. Now, Xavier Crowell announces the 26th? Mm-hmm. We could be looking at something different. I know that he visited Alabama over the weekend, and a lot of people think that the Crimson Tide are the team to beat, but Texas still trying there.
And we will close with the super chat from Leandrew25. Thank you, Leandrew. Hypothetically, what are some non-conference teams? What non-conference teams would you guys want to see the Longhorns play in the near future?
Well, I love that they played Notre Dame, Michigan, and Ohio State. I think Penn State would be great if they got something going there. I'd love to see them play USC or UCLA. I think a trip to the West Coast, either Northern or Southern California. Wouldn't mind a University of Washington home and away. Seattle's a good road trip, a unique one. Miami, I mean, because the problem with Miami, I'll just give you this, and or a Florida State who are naturals because of their situations. You're going into a hot environment one of those years. You know, you want to get somewhere like Michigan last year. I think it was 75 degrees at kickoff. Something like that. You know, Ohio State probably not going to be 98 at kickoff this week, right? On August 30th. So those early season games in particular, West Coast better off, you know, temperate weather. Wisconsin would be a fun one. You know, yeah. People are saying Washington now that Penix is no longer there. That's the truth. That dude.
Penn State's one for me. Penn State's one for me, Bobby. That I would like to see Texas play Penn State. Like I think the last one was in the '96 season, that '97 Fiesta Bowl.
That was yes.
But I was gonna say, go ahead, Bobby. Sorry.
No, I was gonna say I actually went to I think the only time Texas played at Penn State. Texas beat Joe Paterno in '90 in State College. It was a great game. That was a fun atmosphere. It's a good atmosphere for college football.
I would say, you know, it's one of those programs I don't hate. So I would like to see, especially, you know, last year's playoff game was fun. I'd like to see maybe Texas and Clemson do some kind of home and home or home neutral, something like that. The fact that Texas has never played Florida State in football, to me, is just one of those facts that I just –
They haven't? They've never played?
Never.
Texas and Florida State have never played each other. So that's one of those facts that it's hard for me to wrap my mind around. So I'd love to see Texas and Florida State. And I think this is one, Bobby, if you're of a certain age, and we did this we talked about this on a live stream. For me, I'm 41 years old, so I'm in my formative years when the Big 12 is coming together. If you tell me Texas is playing a home and home with Nebraska, that means something to me. If you tell somebody CJ Vogel's age that Texas is playing Nebraska, CJ said he couldn't care less about Texas playing Nebraska. So I think it depends on what age bracket you're in. If a Texas-Nebraska series would move the needle at all.
It's kind of Texas Arkansas is the same way.
Yeah.
I mean, people your age may not care about Arkansas as much, Jeff, as I do, right? Because of art. I think that fair conversation. I think somebody like Northwestern might be good too. Get a Chicago weekend in, something like that.
I wouldn't mind going back to Boulder. You know, if Colorado, whether Dion's there or not, if they can be a relevant program, I wouldn't mind a early season trip to Boulder.
That'd be cool. And we do have one other super chat that just came in. My apologies, almost missed it. Brandon Huey. Brandon says, should Texas do away with 2 or 3 o'clock games before October? Seriously, folks are being carted out in droves. It can't.
I agree. Dude, I don't know about October, but certainly the first 3 weekends of the season through mid-September. And I know late September can be hot, but I think so. I mean, I'm a big believer in that. But, the almighty TV dollar is what creates this merry-go-round that and allows us to watch games no matter where we're at. But I definitely I think Chris Del Conte is aware of that too, by the way. You're not telling him anything he doesn't know. But it's hard. When you're part of something that is larger than yourself, you don't always get your way. If Chris Del Conte got his way, I think he'd do night games every week, every day in August and September.
If there was one pitfall to losing LHN and your third tier TV rights going to the SEC and the conference controlling it, this is it. Because like you said, Bobby, Texas has no say in it. And look, when you talk about the SEC, it's hot everywhere in the South in September. Yeah. So somebody, there is going to be a fan base somewhere among the 16 teams in the conference. There's going to be a group of fans that is not happy about having to play at 11 o'clock or a 2:30 game in September. But
I've got to
happen to somebody.
So when I traveled with the team back in the 90s or early 90s, the hottest I ever was at Eddie Stadium during that time frame was Mississippi State in a non-conference game. God, holy cow. It was scorching, humid. So to Jeff's point, anywhere in the deep South in summertime and late summer, ugly.
Yeah.
Maybe you could get away with it in Lexington, or Arkansas in the hills,
Yeah. And one more just rolled in. Jerry's Jack Links. Let's play a home and home against the standard of college football, Yale. Who has more natties than Yale? No one.
I'd be fun. Go make a trip of it. I hear there's great pizza in New Haven, Connecticut. I'm sold, but no. I mean, look, if I had to choose, it'd be somebody like Stanford, USC, Washington. I think Texas needs a West Coast trip. That's what I would. They've got enough in the Deep South, and I know you mentioned Florida State. The Midwest doesn't really have much talent these days, frankly. I'd go, and they're already with Michigan, Ohio State, and so even a Penn State doesn't make sense to me. I'd go someone on the West Coast.
What about Vegas, Bobby? Get a Vegas trip, and it's indoor stadium.
No. And this would be the other thing. I would say going forward and starting in 2027, I would make every single team I play in non-conference have grass as a requirement.
Ooh, that's good.
I like it. I know 27 forward, no field turf. They'd have to have grass.
That's good. I like that.
Guys, so that's going to do it for today's episode of Coffee and Football, presented by John Donovan and Longhorn Wealth Management Group. Want to thank them, along with Huel and Omaha Steaks, for sponsoring today's show. Of course, thank you all for tuning in as well. Don't forget to head on over to ontexasfootball.com. And for first-time subscribers, use promo code OTFOG when you sign up. You can get a full year for just $39.95. A lot of good stuff going on over there right now. And remember, we can't be on here all the time to bring you the news, so the best place to get that news is on TexasFootball.com. Bobby, what do you have later today here, though?
Jeff and CJ are going to recount some stuff that also comes in on recruiting. We are looking for something to perhaps occur today in recruiting. Just, we can't promise anything, but there's some reality to that, perhaps. So be aware of that. Also, hopefully Jerry's back tonight for Talking Ball. If not, Jeff and I or CJ and I will be taking questions there. Also, this afternoon, Rod Babers and Coach Shipley, as well as CJ Vogel, are on the winning drive at 3:15. Visit us. We've got a lot of stuff on the message boards right now over at On Texas Football. Like I said, I think there's going to be 15 guys at least that are on the Texas board that will be deciding their college future in the next 7 to 14 days. So It's that time. It's recruiting time. Visit us over at ontexasfootball.com.
Well, we will be back same time, same place tomorrow. So for Bobby Burton and Powell, I'm Blake Monroe, and we'll see you then.